Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure and it's our pleasure from IMT Ghaziabad that we have this eminent speakers with us today, and we have a very interesting topic to discuss, which is about the skill sets required to manage crisis from multi-country perspective. Now, as we all are aware that because of this crisis, which is the pandemic, there's a lot of things, there are a lot of changes which have happened. I mean, some things which are unprecedented, some things which we never ever imagined, and we are going through that. So it has actually impacted the work, the workers, the organizations in all the ways. So we have the today the eminent panelists. I'll just introduce quickly those people to you. So first we have Miss Radha Sriharsha. Radha is Director HR with Maersk Global Services Centers. She's got a glorious track record. She was a senior HR leader with around 18 plus years of rich experience in diverse industries like education, telecom, transport, and logistics. So she's got a myriad of rich experience, and she's been a strategic change agent who ably influenced many transformation efforts towards critical businesses and customer outcomes like organizational visioning, corporate rebranding efforts, reimagining people engagement and experience, organization right sizing, critical process outsourcing, organization design changes, and workforce reskilling towards organization future state. She is a postgraduate in psychology and she's an XLRI alum. She's also a certified coach. And personally, she is a fitness enthusiast and nature lover. So that's a good. So we welcome you on board, Radha. It's really
Thanks
nice
so much.
to meet you, to see you here in person. Our next speaker is Mr. Bhaskar Bhandari. Bhaskar is associated with Acer India Private Limited as Senior Director Human Resources. He also has a vast experience with him. He is responsible for managing the HR operations for Acer India. And before this, he was associated with Bharti Airtel. So again, the combination of different industries. He began his career with a manufacturing company and later moved to Eureka Forbes Limited. He was the regional head, human resources at Eureka Forbes for Southern region. Later on, he was heading Microsoft Consulting as GM Human Resources. Over the last 25 years, he has worked extensively in the area of strategic HR initiatives, employee branding, policy framework, diversity, training and development, education programs, awards and recognition, assessment center, and executive coaching. Currently, Acer India is certified as Great Place to Work by Great Place to Work India Institute India. In addition to this, Acer India has recently awarded as National Best Employer Brands 2019. So definitely, Bhaskar, are coming from a very esteemed organization, and we are looking forward to some real great insights from you about the topic. We welcome you on board. Uh, our third speaker is Mr. Nipun Vinayak, who is the director with the People Advisory Services of Ernst Young and is based out of the Gurgaon office. He is, we are proud to say that he is also an alumnus of IMT Ghaziabad. He brings with him around 15 plus years of experience in the field of HRM and business operations. He has core expertise in supporting organizations in restructuring their organization design, HR transformation, leadership development, HR technology, performance management, L&D, HR processes, and policy improvement, cultural transformation, and change management across diverse industry sectors like telecommunication, IT, media and entertainment, government and public services, consumer products, core manufacturing, financial services, and not-for-profit in India, UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Malaysia, Thailand, and Nepal. I must say this is something which is like absolutely fantastic. So across countries, across industries, across functions. Wonderful. Alongside his engineering and MBA, Nipun is also a certified global professional for human resources by HRCI USA. In his free time, Nipun loves to play lawn tennis, swim, or listen to his favorite music. He also believes in spending time on fitness and also travel to new places. Welcome, Nipun. So we are really glad to have such eminent people amongst us to talk about and to discuss about this issue, which is very, very relevant and which is very, very contextual right now. Just before we start the discussion, a little kind of a protocol, particularly for the audience. So we are right now keeping you on mute. If you have any questions, if to any of the speakers or all of them, please write your questions or queries in the chat box. We will be taking up this session in a conversational mode. So we will be opening up the questions to the speakers and let us hear their viewpoints on that. Towards the end of the session, we will take up the audience questions also, so that the insights are more in a concretized and in a more distilled manner for us. So yeah, so I think all of us are facing peculiar times these days. I mean, this pandemic has actually put the world upside down. Some kind of standstill, and then whatever way it is working now, it is working totally absurd to some extent. So my question to all the speakers, and you may choose who wants to start with this, that because of this current pandemic, how has the business context changed in the your organization, or in general what you have seen, because you all are coming from multiple industry? And also I want to understand that how this change is going to impact the talent landscape in the general and in your organization as well. So maybe whoever wants to start with can pick it up.
Okay.
Radha, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and coincidentally, we are in a business that's like vital to the current crisis, which is global supply chain. So it's also a responsibility to share, what we're experiencing. And for our employees and for our people, unfortunately, this is not a time when they can only think about themselves. And we're really grateful to our employees, and they've actually held the business together. And they've managed to help our customers a lot during this time, and also countries, because a lot is dependent on material moving across the world and bringing the geographies together and making sure that the supply chains don't break. So with that, let me begin by saying that in the world of supply chain, of course, if you look at macroeconomics and what's impacting and what has happened with this crisis is, the demand and supply, right? Because of the lockdowns and all of that, production has stopped, manufacturing has stopped, and it started in the hub of the world, which is Hubei province in China, which is the hub for manufacturing, right? And across the world, the impact has been that everywhere, because of the shutdown, there is a drop in manufacturing, there is a drop in consumption, so there is no demand. And that has impacted everything. It's like a cyclical thing on all other aspects. There is also the regulatory and the political, the geopolitical tensions that we're seeing, with a lot of countries wanting to safeguard employment within their own country, right? And you keep hearing this in the news, in Twitter and all of that, or every country saying that, why do we need, to give away jobs to others? Why can't we produce in our own country? And that's just gotten magnified in this crisis. So a lot of these external and global, factors are impacting decisions for organizations. But if you look at our context, what has happened is, for us, it's all the more important that we keep, the resilience of the organization to look after, one, its people, its customers, and communities. So we no longer are operating, in isolation, right? You need to think about suppliers, you need to think about customers. And this also meant that you needed to be a little bit innovative in how you solve some issues. Even if there is a nationalist problem that somebody says that I won't allow your trucks or your cargo to move out of the country, then how do you protect the cargo, and especially cargo that is perishable? So we had to make a lot of decisions and in fact create products on the go to help our customers actually be able to save their cargo wherever it is, like either through a warehouse or through trucking or containers being made available. So our product teams and our technology teams, in fact, have worked hard in making sure that customers have visibility and customers are able to take care of their, because this is actually financial wealth, right, for them. The cargo actually means business. So when you don't help them, you actually ruin and impact their business. So for us, it's been, on the business side, it's been all of these elements. And let me just add 2 points around talent. For us also, we are a 120 country organization. We have global teams, and our global teams work for different leaders working in different geographies. What that has meant is, again, agility in our thinking and our talent models, right? And this is not that it has, thankfully, our organization over the last 3 years has been on a transformation effort. So we were at the cusp of a stage where we could actually switch to this model of remote working pretty comfortably, except for the 2 units, which is our crew that is on the fleet, right, who are actually in the vessels. They unfortunately had to be in the same vessels. They couldn't switch. And of course, our folks in the terminals, because in the terminals, again, you need your people to be on the ground and they can't work at home. But for everybody else, which is office-going people, we were able to switch very comfortably. And our timing models are very flexible. Like if somebody was doing a 9 hours in office, today could sit 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours in the night, somehow complete the 9 hours, but keep it really flexible and still be able to deliver to our customers. So our talent model and also the overall fluidity of the organization evolved during this period, and that helped us. So let me pause and let's hear from maybe Bhaskar and Nipun as well.
Yeah. Bhaskar, I think you've been muted, so can you just no, not able to hear you. So technology has its own,
That's one of the biggest struggles these days.
Yes. So uncertainty gets multiplied when you are operating with the technology. So maybe in the meantime, I think the administrator will help Bhaskar in resolving this issue. Nipun, would you like to add to what Radha has just said?
Yep. I think Radha mentioned some very pertinent problems and issues that we are all facing these days. But I think this is the classiest example of what people have been talking about, something which is known as VUCA. Now, we honestly never got to really understand what a volatile, uncertain, complex, and an ambiguous environment really meant. And I think there can be no better case, or worst case, I should say, than what has hit us for the last 3 months. I think there's so much of disruption which is going on in everybody's life on a daily basis, whether it is professional lives, personal lives, and the amount of fear and the insecurity that this pandemic has caused to everyone. And whether it is bringing chaos to businesses, whether it is bringing chaos to manpower, supply chain disruptions, sales channels disruption, I think no longer people are now talking about a 4-year strategy, 5-year strategy, even a 1-year strategy. I think everything has been thrown out of the window. I mean, people are just saying that, can we survive today and can we possibly survive tomorrow? I think that's the huge mindset change that has happened over the last 3 months. And I think echoing what Radha has been talking about, whether it is a drop in demand or consumer behavior, consumer preferences changing, there's a lot of negative sentiment in the ecosystem. And honestly, this is going to stay for the next 6 to 9 months at least. I mean, even if there is a vaccine, no vaccine, but this environment of uncertainty, fear, it's going to stay for the next, at least the midterm that I would want to pick up over here. Now, specifically coming to what's the impact on consulting, we get to work with a lot of public sector and private sector clients, both India and globally. I think whatever people may be talking about, whether it's going to be a U-shaped resurgent, a V-shape, a W-shape, an S-shape, I mean, whatever they may want to call it, but I think I would probably want to pick it and place it into 3 broad buckets. And the way we would want to pick up the current scenario, it's like You have a now, which is just about responding to the pandemic and just barely continuing what you have been doing so far. And whether it is about protecting your employees, whether it is protecting your infrastructure, whether it is dragging on with some bit of operations, whether it is customer side, sales side, manufacturing, logistics, so you're just carrying out the bare minimum operations. And honestly, how do you basically survive this phase of financial instability? So there's a now phase, which predominantly was there for the first 2.5 months. Now gradually organizations are now moving to a phase which I would probably call it the next phase, which is about how do you really adapt your operations and how do you really increase the resilience. Now, whether it is fixing your supply chains, whether it is how do you restart your productions, your manufacturing units, how do you restart your entire sale channel, how do you actually reimagine some of your sales, customer services, logistics related activities, whether it is talking on reduction of cost, whether it is talking on maximizing digital footprint, focusing on cybersecurity, focusing on digitization, increasing workforce space, flexibility. So that's something which is next, and it's going to be there for the next at least 3 to 5 months, as I would want to pick it up. And then there is something which is beyond, which is, I think so, after these 3 to 5 months of a phase, which would be largely around seizing some of the new opportunities which organizations see in the ecosystem. How do you basically redefine your purpose? How do you redefine your strategies? How do you explore different go-to-market channels to reach out to your end customers, your end clients? How do you really reinvent yourself as a business? How do you digitize yourself in order to ensure that your go-to-market and your reach to employees is all ensured in full continuity? So that's something which eventually I think would start in the next beyond the next 3 to 5 months. And basically, if you have to talk about how is the current talent landscape really changing, I think these three phases, whether it is now, next, or beyond, will actually really define how your talent landscape should be really looking like, and whether it is less of offline, more of online, whether it is remote working, whether it is selling through online channels, digital channels, whether it is logistics and how to really manage logistics in a lockdown scenario. How do you really reorganize your entire organization? How do you really reorganize the entire manpower? And I would want to uh, particularly call out over here, how do you really have the right size of manpower in terms of quantity? Do you have the right skills in terms of quality? What is your manpower cost really going to be in the future? And what is the type of manpower? Because I think when we are talking of the talent landscape, the type of manpower which is going to get deployed in the future, those models are going to change. And whether it is reduction of full time, bring in more of contractual or gig economy or freelancers, whether it is about remodeling your entire shift operations, enhanced focus on safety, sanitization, increase in automation in manual jobs, robots replacing manpower in a lot of areas. And what even Radha was mentioning about, there are organizations that we are talking about who are now actually focusing on onshoring some of those activities back to the home countries so that they are able to avoid some of the disruptions in the supply chain. So some of these things would really impact your talent landscape and how it's going to change in the future. And I think there is going to be a huge impact on the way performance management is done, productivity management is done in organizations. How do you look at the entire learning and development engine? How do you really look at the entire hiring and the onboarding process? How do you really look at the entire customer experience and the employee experience? I think so this is all going to reshape in the next 3 to 6 months.
Yeah. So I think some of the very important points which you have raised, Nipun, and I could hear some common denominator also with what Radha is saying and what you are saying. That's something about flexibility, because what we are seeing are a lot of new business models, work models are emerging. And the bottom line is flexibility, because the given situation, one has to be flexible. Bhaskar, would you like to add anything to what Radha and Nipun have just now mentioned about the changing business context? Uh, Bhaskar, are you there? No, I think he is not audible. Yeah, so maybe just a suggestion, maybe Bhaskar, you can try switching off your system and then trying it switching on. Sometimes that resolves the shutdown. So we will continue the discussion with the other speakers on the and by the time Bhaskar comes back, maybe we will take his inputs also. So one thing which Nipun you have mentioned, and I really like that analogy, that there are three categories: now, next, or beyond. Now I would like to add one more step, kind of a back step to that, that even before now, now coming to the from talents landscapes, I would like to bring the discussion to the skills and competencies which were required. So going a step backward from now, can we just spend some time in understanding the different type of skills and competencies which were quite relevant and sought after before this pandemic or before this crisis, and how there is a shift which we are now experiencing, which we are now envisaging in the change, the skill sets and the competencies in the coming times, which is the next and beyond. So can we have some thoughts on that?
Maybe I can go first and Nipun can add. I think, like I was saying, right, it's not that we have seen the entire approach towards digital or transformation or being tech savvy only now. It's been on for a while. We've also seen the onset of AI, robotics, many processes getting automated, many interfaces becoming like chatbots coming in. It's been on for many years. And if you look at from a talent standpoint, I think some of the skills that have always, in the last 2-3 years that have evolved have been around curiosity, sense making, just being able to understand patterns, whether it is with data, whether it is with behavior, whether it is with, when there are various inputs that you get from various sources, then how do you make sense of it and be able to draw? And sometimes in many organizations across industries, people are actually working with technology in a big way. And there is almost like a human bot connection, right? So maybe 50%, sometimes 70% is actually automated and only 30% is humans making sense and actually being able to leverage what is automated. And hence, there has been solutions, like people no longer are limited to thinking about problems, but thinking solutions. And when thinking solutions, thinking always digital and design first, which means that how can I make something as simple and easy? Like you don't need to onboard even a senior citizen on how to use Facebook or WhatsApp, right? It's so intuitive that people, those applications are so easy for even somebody who's not perhaps gone through formal education. And we're seeing this upswing in some of our rural places, people getting used to using TikTok and making videos and all of that. So how, those are some very, very, very critical pieces that have already been there, right? And how has that happened is this openness of being able to adapt to digital in a very intuitive way, not taught. So these things are not that there is a curriculum on how to do TikTok. It just happens, you watch it and you learn it. A lot of video has already been there. So how can talent be more comfortable with? So video interviewing is not new. It has been there in a long time. In fact, for organizations like us, which have a global presence, we have had to be hugely dependent on video, and it has been fantastic and seamless for us. And we only invest in making people travel when it is necessary. Otherwise, virtually or through video, you're actually able to get everything that you need in a hiring process. So there has been, critical thinking, problem solving, being able to look at a solutions mindset, having curiosity. These have all been there, data mindset. What has shifted? Now, if I look at some of these examples, and learning agility as well, right? But what has shifted right now is, now this, like Nipun mentioned, right? This crisis is not something that we are in and it's going to go away. the wait for this period of going away is unpredictable. We don't even know if it's a 6-month window, if it's a 12-month crisis, and different countries are in different stages of recovery. What does that require? That requires a sense of adaptive behavior, both in terms of thinking and in terms of change agility. And that is number one, right? Being able to be resilient. How can you continue to stay positive, continue to think agile, and be adaptive? And let me give you an example what adaptive means, right? Now, if you had a certain solution to a certain problem and you were doing a certain work a certain way, today you will think about this current crisis and see, how can I change this while not changing the fundamentals, like whether it's user experience or employee experience? You will not revamp the whole thing, but you will just say, how can I make this work even in a remote working situation, like performance management, right? If I had to do a face-to-face conversation, I can still keep everything intact, but maybe I need to do it a little more differently to bring the virtual, because what happens when it's not face-to-face is I don't read so much of the body language as I could do in person, and the human connection is missing. But when it's virtual, you have other things to replace that, and that is through conversations. So I think the skills that are now required is adaptive thinking, ability to ask a lot of questions. Curiosity is now replaced with, are you just being curious is not enough. Can you ask the right questions to go deeper to understand what problem do you want to solve? And then the facet of the data, right? Even though you have access to data and insights out of that, the decisions you make is now, like Nipun was saying, there has to be a near-term solution, there has to be a slightly mid solution, and then you need to look at a little longer term. So even when you're looking at decisions, there is this ability that you need to bring in adaptive, ability to adapt and make decisions. Lastly, my point is around being inclusive, whether you're an employee, whether you're a leader. If you look at the different personas, right, we can't do a one-size-fits-all anymore, right? What does that mean? As an employee, when I'm talking to a colleague, I can't assume that I have a child, so she also may have a child and hence has a problem with taking care of children. Perhaps she's single, perhaps she's a divorcee, perhaps it's a guy and a parent, perhaps it's a single, right? Perhaps it's a large family living together and a lot of. So the personas can be so many and you cannot generalize. And therefore, being able to embrace others and being able to understand and be sensitive in being inclusive becomes another very important aspect. It's not so much of a skill that you can develop, but it's really important for success. Yeah, let me pause here and let's hear from the others.
Yeah. Nipun, how would you like to add to the points which Radha has just now shared?
So I think Radha covered it quite beautifully, but I think I'll just give you some of my client examples. Obviously, I'll not share some names over here. But when you spoke about how the shift has happened, what was there earlier, what is probably not relevant, and what new has got added to the list. So I work with a lot of government clients, and these are at both state government level and at the central government level. I think earlier, and that's pretty much in the social structure as well. Digital, for example, is something which is not a very comfortable thing to talk about in the government sector. I mean, a lot of manual work, a lot of files, documents, physical meetings to happen. And this was what was there pre-March or pre-April 2020. The shift that I'm seeing now is even those government sector clients who probably never even had a laptop to work with, they had a desktop in their offices, who were used to signing files for the last 20-25 odd years, storing documents in the big cupboards and everything which we usually see. They have moved on to digital. And I was amazed when one of my client counterparts really told me that, Nipun, you don't need to come to my office. Can we do a Zoom meeting? Now that's what I call is the shift in. I would not probably call it a skill, but I think much more than what is required at this moment is the shift in the mindset. Now, somebody who was not really aware of digital has now moved on to digital. And when I say digital, I think people usually look at digital from something like a cloud or an IoT or a blockchain. I think digital is very, very fundamental part of our life. And I would like to put digital in a 3A framework, where we start with awareness, then somebody moves to appreciation, and then the third part is application. So I think the awareness of people was there, but I think the appreciation was not there. People were not comfortable using WhatsApp, using remote working, using digital means to collaborate and interact with people. I think that appreciation has increased over the last 3 months. And with application and with appreciation comes something which is application. And what Radha was also telling, that I think there are some things which people honestly have got to learn on their own. There's no training which is available. I don't train anybody to use Microsoft Teams or a Zoom or a WhatsApp chat. They have, by trial and error, by experimenting, they have learned about it. And we face a lot of issues. For example, people nowadays, when they're connecting on Zoom, they forgot to turn on the mute button, because that's something which they're not doing in the daily basis. And then we have to tell them, sorry, you have to put on the mute, you have to turn on the camera, and then they have to figure out where that button is. So I think that's a shift in the skills that is required, that how much of digital appreciation can really come along. I think that's one skill that was not there. I think the second learning comes from the e-commerce industry, where I think we used to really talk about that, how can somebody not think about the long term. People are working on a quarterly basis, monthly basis, and we were really fascinated by even their target setting, performance management, something now that has been replaced. We used to talk about an annual operating plan. They used to have a daily operating plan or a monthly operating plan, MOP and DOPs. That's something which is now coming to all the sectors, be it government, be it consulting, be it FMCG, logistics. Everybody is now talking of, sorry, we don't work on AOPs, we work on a DOP. What needs to be done tomorrow morning? Are we really clear? Where do I need to go and talk to my customers? Am I really clear? What do I need to do with my team members today and tomorrow? Am I really clear? I'm not really talking of the long term. So that's again a shift. And hence, instead of, I think, so strategic planning, instead of long-term planning, long-term budgeting, I think that resilience factor is going to come in. That can we really survive, and how can we survive in the bestest of the capabilities? Now that's something which is a new skill which is going to come up, which was honestly not there earlier. The third thing, and there I would probably like to slightly differ from Radha, because I mean, there are a lot of industries still who have not joined the bandwagon of digital. I mean, digital for many organizations was a corridor conversation which used to happen, that we want to become digital, we want to have, and for them, digital honestly used to be, I'm having an attendance management system, so I'm digital. Now that's something which is honestly changing. So there are a lot of organizations which were digital to the true sense. Now digital has been forced upon people. So whatever people used to talk about transformation in digital few months ago, now that's actually becoming a reality. So that skill was missing, that thought process was missing in a lot of organizations, and that's actually forced upon them in the last 3 months. And honestly, for many industries to survive, they have to really build on the digital transformation and capabilities.
Yeah, so if I try to sum up what you two were saying on this point, I think this pandemic has actually created that inertia breaking kind of setup for certain changes which the organizations were looking forward to, the kind of skills they wanted to develop in their people, but somehow there was an internal resistance or inertia, and this pandemic has actually kind of destroyed that barrier. So in Hindi we call it आवश्यकता आविष्कार की जननी है. So probably this is a time of necessity which has hastened the process of digitization, or developing newer business models and changing the talent landscape to some extent. So I think that makes sense, and across the industries we are getting some sort of a reflection on that. I don't know whether Bhaskar was able to join in. So we will continue, and as soon as he joins back, I will have his inputs on that. So coming to my next area, and we are getting some very interesting questions in the chat box related to these topics, and we will pick up few of them towards the end of the discussion. So both of you are coming from a multi-country setup. So you are from organizations who have a global presence, and I'm sure given this last 2-3 months of the period wherein the operations were actually hampered, or some sort they were not as smooth as earlier. So can you just throw some light on the type of challenges which you would have experienced during the last 3-4 months in managing the cross country or the multi-country context? So some of them I think Radha has in the beginning mentioned about, but maybe a little more on that.
Yeah, sure. And it's this is a super important question. So I'm glad you brought that up, because for all of us in the leadership as well as in whichever capacity you are in, it's really important to be sensitive to several factors that impact different countries, and the impact both from a timing standpoint. The timeline of impact is very different, and the level of impact is very different, and the intensity, because of the political conditions, because of the regulatory conditions and contractual terms there, etc. And depending on what kind of workforce you employ, these factors can be very different. And if you are either a leader or you work with a team that is cross country, and there are multiple geographies that are part of your team, when you're a leader, it becomes, and you're making decisions like policy changes and stuff like that. For us, what it has meant is, a lot of deep thinking and understanding by talking to local authorities, talking to local employees, spending time and even understanding everything, like, what Nipun said, right? A day in the life of, literally, as the crisis was happening, because there are different realities emerging every day, whether it is to do with impact in terms of the infection rate of COVID, or whether the fatality rate or access to medical facilities. When should you, shut your offices? When can you bring back people into offices? So on every element of business continuity, or even elements of taking care of employees, you have to think about. And in fact, the first step was to find out. So we invested a lot of time. We set up task forces, and we already have a very robust business continuity team, which really kind of kicks into action the moment something happens, and they in fact drive. So it's almost like they're fully empowered and fully accountable to take care of all of these aspects, because they are the experts. So what happens is, automatically they get the power to make choices without having to wait for any kind of bureaucracy. That because I'm in this country, in London, so we need to consult somebody who is heading London HR, or that never happened. So you should be, as an organization, be able to do this with agility. The second element is, we have to do collaboration becomes really, really important. And what collaboration means is that you never know what team will be required to kick in at what point to solve a certain problem. And this we witnessed in the example that I gave you with the product team, right? Because we were talking to our customers. So the other good thing that we did, and we have several testimonies from our customers, is the way we were able to reach out and stay together with our customers. So there was never this equation of a service provider and a customer. It was like we are partners in this. And having to understand and then being able to provide whatever the customers needed. And this was again something that we didn't think about when we got into the crisis. The product and the technology teams, in fact, enabled these things as we went by. And this also means that they are also accountable and empowered to make those choices for the customer. The third thing is on the people front. Here, like I was saying, right, as leaders, you have to be extremely inclusive in creating a psychologically safe space for your employees, depending on which geography they belong to, because again, there are realities. Some people were not allowed to walk out of their buildings. Some people could not access medical facilities, so you had to help some of them. So you had to make sure that every employee felt taken care of. And that meant, so we had to kick in a Google form immediately, we had to get a survey, we do a daily survey. So we find out, are our employees safe, is their family safe? Do they have access to medical if they need, if somebody gets infected, do they know what to do? So is there like a small playbook of what should I do when I get infected or my family gets infected? If they need ambulance or ventilators, do they know which numbers to contact? So a bunch of things like this on taking care of our people, which is a responsibility. Again, here, the organization never said HR has to figure this out or BCP has to figure this out, right? It is the joint accountability of the leadership and of the people involved, including to the extent where employees themselves would say, I think we're missing this detail for this country, let's add this in because then it makes it comprehensive for. So making sure that you're bringing all the important people and stakeholders into conversation before you finalize how you want to approach. And then you have to keep it agile throughout. So let me pause here. Let's hear from Nipun. I hope this helped just understand how we dealt with it.
Yeah, very. Yeah, Nipun, how would you like to add up to what Radha has just now said?
I think there are 2-3 critical elements that possibly we focused, and I mean, I might use a little bit of a different word, but I think the sentiments are the same as Radha's. I think the most important thing right now, and how we've probably dealt with people internally as well as with our clients and expecting the clients to deal with us in the same way, is I think increase in the degree of empathy and an emotional intelligence. And this is at a cross cultural level. And ma'am, we were talking yesterday on call, a very clear example from a cross culture environment. We often have team members in other countries. Some of them are in the EU, UK, Middle East, Southeast Asia. I think social norms are different in many countries. The I would say the phase in which these countries are going through the entire pandemic is very different. Radha also mentioned about government regulations, the way various governments are dealing. Somewhere there's a lockdown, a complete lockdown, partial lockdown, no lockdown, etc., etc. And I think there is also a degree of, I would probably want to put it as financial maturity amongst various markets. And that's where we were focusing on empathy, because if you look at India, for example, we still, many homes don't have the daily automation to deal with the daily stuff. I mean, we don't have dishwashers, many people don't have washing machines. Here we have to do all our work on our own. Maids have been asked not to come into societies for the last 3 months, whereas somebody in the EU wouldn't really have to face some of these challenges because they have a lot of automation at work, their living styles are a little different. Essentially, if you look at some of the regulations back in those countries, I've had team members in other countries who have taken 3 to 4 hours of a child care off during the normal working hours in an EU environment. So people back in some of the countries would not really available from 10 to 2 in the morning, which are your core working hours, because apparently because of some reason they have to take care of the children. Now, I don't think some of those things are still appreciated in India. I mean, we would still want people to be up in the morning, 7 o'clock, night, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Also, there are calls which are going on. So we had to really empathize and actually create a culture of appreciation and adaptability within our team members and within team members from other countries that, hey, look, India might be a little different than the way you countries are operating. And similarly, there are some norms and some regulations which are in place in your countries, and we will have to appreciate some of those as well. So that was, I think, so one of the main aspects of how we dealt with this this crisis over the last 3 to 4 months. I would like and the other thing that we also had to manage, and this is also coming from managing hybrid teams, as I would like to put it, wherein you have team members who have parents at home, you have team members who have children, who have no children, who are staying away from children, away from their parents. So how do you really sort out all your activities and processes? How do you make them comfortable that yes, the organization cares about you as an individual, and this is not now like a team member, but is like an individual who is working with us on a very close level? So how do you really build that culture of trust, communication, honest conversations happening, that okay, if you are not available for certain duration of the day, we are okay to postpone this activity to tomorrow? I think some of those things we've looked at. And the other thing is from a client perspective also, we've been trying to now work back with them on the three pillars that I spoke about, so that they are able to basically navigate the now pillar or the now phase of the pandemic, and how can we really support them in moving towards the next stage, which is basically, even to that extent, going beyond the usual consulting domain, and actually helping them on the implementation side also, that hey, look, and there have been ample examples of what EY has been doing. So a lot of state governments, we are actually helping government people in food distribution. I mean, we have our own team members who are making checklists in government go downs at how much amount of ration is available, where is it getting distributed, how many people really got it at the end of the day. We've been working back with the government in training doctors, nurses, Anganwadi people in terms of how do you really deal with this pandemic. So I think that's again something which may not come as a core consulting expertise, but now we're actually working with healthcare workers, trying to understand that, okay, how do you use a PPE? Can we make a training module to help you out in terms of sanitization of equipments in hospitals? And we are now gradually learning. So it's an adaptive environment for us also for the last 3 months, but hey, we are there for our clients at the end of the day.
Yeah. So some very important points I think both of you have raised, particularly from the cross-country perspective, understanding their context very well in advance. So not only about the regulations, the other political frameworks and the context in that sense, but also about the softer aspect, which are norms and the way of working, and probably be a little sensitive towards that. That will be very, very helpful. I think that's a very important point which we need to take, because going forward, as we are saying, from now to next and next to beyond, probably we need to have that type of preparedness for having this as a new normal. Do you think that any prior exposure to cross-cultural setup? So for example, we have the dual country program, wherein 1 year the students study in Dubai, and they are kind of getting projects also there, and 1 year they are here in Ghaziabad campus. So this type of model or this type of exposure will be somehow useful for them in handling these type of issues. Do you think that would be a good idea, or that would be?
I think sorry, Nipun, go ahead.
I think definitely yes, because as far as some of these global campuses are concerned, we have a lot of people coming from different parts of the world coming and studying over there. And I mean, I've been in Dubai, I've stayed in Dubai, so I know the type of cultural amalgamation that city brings in. I think definitely, I mean, while the skills that we are talking about, digital, AI, analytics, blah, 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 I think those are some things which anybody can learn through a certification program. But I think some of these softer skills like empathy, cross-culture working, understanding how different countries work, how different societies really work, I think a place like Dubai and those students talking to their counterparts, students from other countries, coming back to India, learning about the Indian context. I think there's a lot of mix and match of learnings. There's a lot of, I would say, exchange of ideas, thought processes. And I think definitely a multi-country exposure at this point of time will really, really help you. And the other thing is, I think not only from a cultural aspect, but I think some of the best practices which many countries are deploying on how to really fight this pandemic, whether it is on the healthcare side, whether it is on the financial stability side, whether it is managing psychological problems, counseling of people, whether it is around customer management. I think if there is a dual country sort of a program, definitely this exchange of ideas and best practices can also be there, which is really the need of the hour right now. I mean, rather than just looking at what you are doing, I think it's also good that we learn from what others are doing right now.
Yeah. So yeah, Radha, would you?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add that this is great that you are providing this opportunity. And like Nipun mentioned, Dubai, in fact, is a great example where, it's almost like a micro world, right? Literally, you have multiple nationalities coming together, and many international schools actually, and business schools like this, being able to provide that student community where you're exposed to multiple families, multiple cultures. And that's great because it just at a very young age you become open to understanding and accepting very different ways of living, whether it is to do with food habits, whether it is to do with what time they wake up, what is their even very little things about life. It just opens up people to experiences. But I also want to add that in the way the current issue that we're dealing with is going, perhaps there will be times when we won't be able to do this as much as we did in the past, at least for some time, with travel restrictions and all of that. And I think for students, and there is a whole community of students watching us now. So I'm also saying that the technology actually allows us to be part of various communities, whether it is on Twitter or whether it is on Reddit. Different platforms like Medium, for example, allows you to actually get exposed to in a very personal way, to get to know people and be part of communities, not necessarily from your own background and country. And if students can actually be a little bit more, there is this sense of confidence that you need to have. And many of us, especially Indian education, Indian childhood, you have this tendency of feeling, because you are colonized, you feel somewhat like subservient when you suddenly meet a foreigner, right? Whoever it is. And you have this, it's very difficult for us to feel confident. And sometimes when we don't follow accents, we feel like it's our problem. And this is something, that for me, it's been a lesson that as much as I don't understand someone when they are speaking either in a Scottish accent or in a Spanish accent, it's the same the other way around, right? But it is the fact that they don't feel under me, but they just feel that, okay, let me ask one more time. I don't follow. Can you go a bit slow? But there is no level. There is no up and down there. So it's good if students at a very young age, and it's great that some of the B schools are doing this already. But at very young age, if you get exposed to working with people in different nationalities in any capacity, it's great. So I'm just encouraging everybody to feel free to open up and just reach out to communities that are there out there in the world.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I think the thoughts are really wonderful about it. And fortunately, now we have Bhaskar also, who has joined back. So Bhaskar, I will request you to present your perspective on. So we were just discussing that in this pandemic, in this crisis time, because all of you are coming from a multi-country perspective. So, what challenges have you faced, and any prior exposure to the students, particularly because they are the budding managers of different cultures? Is it going to really be helpful for them? So what are your views on that?
Okay, I'm extremely sorry. Am I audible now?
Yes, wonderful.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. At least just back end, I was able to make it. Fine. This pandemic has definitely made a big disastrous impact on the business. Let me tell you, in terms of as an IT industry, where we are the pioneers in a laptop business. If someone asks, 15, 16 years back, your laptops is being sold because work from home is the reality in the soon, but those days nobody's accepted that as a reality. But even HR folks had their own thought process in terms of that you need to have a social connection, culture has to be maintained, and things like that. But come COVID, everything has changed, and the millions and millions of people have went with their laptop and started work from home. This is basically a social behavior which has impacted. But going forward, let me sum up, because some of the questions I already missed, but let me put my thoughts straight. As far as what does the impact it has on the business, it has a severe impact on the business, how customers think today. If you see the Indian context, the public sector companies or the government sectors or the private enterprise, the customers themselves have changed their thought process in terms of their buying behavior. Therefore, what is required on the ground is that as the sales, we are predominantly in a sales organization where you need to be in a tech savvy to, first of all, to live in this current scenario, because things are changing so fast. People are embracing new culture, new technology. Virtual meeting is the scenario today to any of the deals. Retail sector has gone through a complete metamorphosis. It has completely changed. Today, you are not visiting malls, but there are a lot of malls which basically display our products, which customers connect is completely lost, but virtual meeting is the only way you can get connected. E-commerce is booming because everything is about the contactless selling. So people don't experience, but they just go to the e-commerce site and connect. So this is the kind of a scenario with which we are working. Things are moving very, very fast. Tech-savvy salespeople only can survive in the current environment, nobody else. The organization today talk to three forms to the customers. Your website is connecting with the customers, your digital marketing is connecting with customers, and finally your sales guy is connecting to the customers. And when the three are pumping in a very structured form, the whole buying scenario completely changes. So therefore, what does it as an imperative for the future landscape of the tech talent? Yes, there is a huge ramification on this as far as the future talents are concerned. One very important thing is that the skill sets what students will have has to undergo a complete change. Whatever the management schools have taught, whatever the principles you taught, it may be in a 30% is relevant in the future, but the next 70% has to come from the new skill sets which basically the COVID throws up in the future. The first important skill set which I feel which is very, very relevant at this point of time for a student community in terms of the changing environment is the how you deal with ambiguity. Is one of the skill sets I'm definitely people must understand. And not only I'm talking freshers from the college or any experienced people who are working in the industry, the first skill set today is how you deal with ambiguity, because everything is ambiguous. Nothing is defined. You take the call. If you're successful, you are a hero. If it's completely gone down, you don't know what to do. That's the kind of a scenario you're working. Businesses have started reinventing time and again. There are two important examples which I can give from the industry during the COVID is, one is your restaurant in New York, which started around 1 year back, a restaurant, a big multi-cuisine restaurant. Immediately the COVID stuck and they didn't have the time to react. They immediately converted into a food supply chain. And all the waiters overnight become delivery boys. You see the change in the scenario. Delivery yesterday's waiters are today's delivery boy in a matter of just 1 week. I will tell you one more instance of an automaker industry in China, which used to be the biggest electric automakers, BYD. You can go and refer this in the site. Overnight, in the 2 weeks, a electric car manufacturer suddenly overnight become the world's biggest mask producer. Can you imagine the turnaround time and the decision-making skills? The chairman of the company has put around 3,000 engineers as a core group and made them to think out of the box and convert this entire thing as a mask making and company. You know what is the result of that? In a matter of 2 weeks, they were able to produce 5 million masks in a day, which is unprecedented in a matter of 2 weeks. So this is the kind of a speed with which you work. Your whatever the principles, management principles, whatever you learned will be relevant when it comes like this. It's your common sense. It is your IQ level which you can turn around things and move faster, which all makes the difference. You may be a good scorer in the business school, but when it comes to reality, these are the skills will make all the difference for you in the post-COVID.
No, so this is very, very relevant, Bhaskar. And in fact, we are getting questions from audience also, which is specifically, they're getting into the bottom line that as a student, what are the skills on which I should work so that I am more relevant and I am ahead of the curve post-pandemic, post-crisis. So I think this is very relevant, and maybe others can also throw light on that. As a student, from that perspective, how should I gear up?
So I think I have to just add a point to what Bhaskar was telling. I think it's not now the time to just look at upskilling yourself, but it is also about how can I cross skill myself. And this is very relevant from a student perspective, because in a B school we really come with a mindset that, oh, I'm an MBA in finance, I'm an MBA in marketing, I'm an MBA in HR operations, whatever it is. Gone are the days when now you can just focus on what you specialize in. Because I mean, some of the skill sets Bhaskar also mentioned. I think let's look at something like a digital merchandiser, which is now becoming one of the most popular skills. Now, when you look at digital merchandising, because malls are not open, how do you not display your products online? I mean, the guy who has just learned about retail management in his MBA days now suddenly has to think about technology. Suddenly he has to think about the search engines. Suddenly has to think about data security, data privacy, the user experience, the user interface. So I no longer come with just a marketing mindset. I mean, if I have to really look at developing products in the future, I have to look at from a holistic way of looking at customer behavior, looking at how technology can behave, looking at how not only just technology from a product development, but even from an infrastructure perspective. And then I bring into my marketing concepts and my pricing concepts into the plate, and I then design a final product. So I think it's a time when people have to start learning about cross skilling themselves and come out of the silos of their specializations.
That's very relevant, and I think that makes quite a sense, particularly as an insight to the B schools also, how we need to look at the skill sets which we are providing to our students. And I think that's a very good and very insightful thought from your side, Nipun. Radha, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I just have one additional point, and Bhaskar and Nipun, very well have covered most of the things. But the one thing that and I constantly am part of either campus placement discussions. I visited a lot of campuses in the past, and not just in COVID, but even before, right? And I interact. We have a very strong management trainee program. I interact with our management trainees when they join, and what happens is the one thing that we, if there's one message from me to this group, it is your ability to write and articulate in as sharp and crisp as possible your thoughts. Because if you ask anybody one question to even say that what problems are you passionate about, or what in the world, like which industries are you passionate about, students can go all over the way. The reason is not because they don't know it. The reason is they know a lot and they want to say a lot. But what a lot of companies want to see is your ability to be sharp, your ability to be very focused in what you want to convey. So having an elevator speech about yourself, even in a manner like if you write your CV, or even if you make a video intro of yourself, how can you make an impact within 1 minute of that, right? And there are very creative ideas that you can explore. So one is the ability to explore, find out, and articulate. And the second thing I want to leave with everyone is your ability to establish connection. And students hesitate, right? They feel that if I write a LinkedIn email to someone, or if I write a direct email to someone I know, like maybe your parents or your friends have other friends who have colleagues working in different companies. And are you comfortable? And the main should not be in finding out that I need a job, or does the company hire now? The questions have to be to understand your company. What is happening right now? What crisis is going on? If I were to look at having a job in this company in 5 years, what are a few things that you will look at that I should acquire? If my interest is in technology, if my interest is in operations, customer service. So you need to be very specific in why you're establishing those connections. So if students can do these two things in addition to what the other panelists mentioned, it will be super important to make the cut. Otherwise, you will be lost in the crowd. There's just too many people. These are two factors that will actually make you stand out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's such a wonderful discussion. I can go on and on and on unless that I see the clock, which is ticking high, and we have actually overshot time, I guess. But it was really a lovely interaction with you all, very insightful. Of course, we can have further discussion offline. There are certain questions. Some of them we could cover during our discussion. Some are still left. So maybe we can connect offline to find the insightful thoughts of all of you. Thanks for your time, Radha, Nipun, Bhaskar. It was really great to connect with you and having your precious insights on the topic. I hope that your contributions or the ideas which you have shared here on this platform will be useful, particularly for the student fraternity who's listening to this webinar, and they will be kind of making sense out of it and trying to prepare themselves for post-pandemic and post-crisis stage. Thank you. Have a nice day. Good night, all of you.
Thank you so
Pleasure
much.
connecting with
Thanks a
everyone.
lot.
Thank you very much.
All the best. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.